Okay, thank you very much. Now I understand the protocol. I'm sorry to jump the gun, but appreciate the opportunity to present this today. I know that we're a little bit pressed for time, so I will try to give a little less rather than speak fast. So hopefully you can understand me. I am the director of the Seed Biotechnology Center at UC Davis, as well as a professor of plant sciences. So let me speak just a little bit about that program and how it relates to some of the things here before I give the technical presentation. Where we start is from this triangle. That is, breeding has a very long history, genomics somewhat less, biotechnology also somewhat less. But these three, the point that we like to make is that seeds are in the middle of this for annual crops. That is, seeds are the way that these breeding technologies will get delivered to farmers. So we've already seen the introduction of input traits that are imported in the field. Output traits are starting to appear that are being delivered through seeds. And there are many applications in breeding itself, in seed production, such as making hybrids, for example, in seed technology in terms of improving seed quality that have yet to be fully utilized. Together, these should lead to improved economic value and consumer and environmental benefits. But for those of us who are seed people, the key point is that seeds are the delivery system for advances in crop improvement. So at our center, 15 years ago, we started a program called the Seed Biotechnology Center, fully in partnership with our seed industry in California, where we conduct research on both breeding and seed technology. We also conduct education. We promote undergraduate, graduate education, but we also offer professional training and education, continuing education programs, and we also do public service as a source of public science-based information and communications. As I said, we've been doing that about 15 years. About 4 years ago, we teamed with Francois Korn, who's the founder and owner of SeedQuest, which some of you may know as a website important in the global seed industry, with the idea that together we could create something called Seed Central that would energize the seed industry cluster around UC Davis. So for example, I think I skipped a slide there. This is a map of the central part of California. UC Davis is located there, as you can see. There's about 80 seed industry companies there and about 400 in our state. I know there are about 500 around Hyderabad, so very similar situation. There's a concentration of seed companies surrounding a university. We created this organization called Seed Central to facilitate communication between the industry and the university, to promote collaborative research, and to attract more companies and individuals and provide more jobs for our graduating students. So this organization has been quite successful. There's a panel discussion tomorrow about a similar topic, and I'll be able to tell more there. But I see great opportunities here for reproducing a similar type of organization in this area in cooperation with the universities and other public research facilities in this area. And in furtherance of this, Dr. Keshavulu and I have recently signed a memorandum of understanding between UC Davis and Telangana State Agricultural University to pursue this. It's one of the reasons that I've been fortunate enough to be invited here. Let me go on with my presentation. As I'm sure is well known to this group, high quality seed is a foundation of agriculture. So I think it was mentioned earlier today that high quality seed alone can increase yields. Good seeds deliver many genetic improvements in yield, pest resistance, consumer quality factors. They don't contain weeds, pathogens, other things that can restrict yields in the future. But they also have to have high physiological quality so that they can germinate rapidly and uniformly and tolerate stresses. When that doesn't happen and we have low plant populations at the start of a crop, it's very difficult to recover from that. So this is probably too small for many of you to read. It's just a series of steps that are required in growing high-quality seed. One is the breeding, variety development, then commercial seed production, the post-harvest cleaning and conditioning. There are other treatments and enhancements that we'll hear about on this program. Drying and storage is what I will focus on, and then feedback from that to improve all of these steps. All of this should create a product that is genetically true to the type of the variety, it's free from diseases and weeds, and has high quality or vigor for the farmer's use. As I said, given the audience, you know most of these things very much more better than I do. I want to focus particularly on one component, seed drying and storage, where we've been doing some research in recent years. We've had for quite a long time ways, equations, models, and so on that will demonstrate the effects of high seed moisture content on longevity. That's just illustrated here for pepper seeds, for example, stored at a relatively warm temperature. And as evident, as the storage relative humidity increases, the seed quality declines, such that seeds stored at high humidities deteriorate very quickly. Whereas, as you can see, if we actually dry seeds below 30%, down to 10, 15, 20% relative humidity, which is quite dry, those seeds actually retain viability for a long time, even at a relatively high temperature. So this has made clear that really inadequate drying and storage of seeds is one of the most crucial factors contributing to rapid loss of seed quality. So as I talked about humidity, let me just refresh your memory that equilibrium relative humidity and moisture content are essentially interchangeable. That is, if we enclose seeds in a sealed vessel, the relative humidity of the air over those seeds will be in equilibrium with the seed and is an indication of the moisture content. Now, what that moisture content is depends upon the type of seed. So we have higher moisture contents at a given humidity for low oil or starchy seeds than we do for high oil seeds. So in many cases, we're moving more toward using relative humidity as a criterion or a measure of seed moisture, since it's applicable across all types of seeds, and we don't have this issue. So I will talk about moisture content or humidity more or less interchangeably. This is a diagram. It's a bit complex, but the basic points are quite straightforward. And in fact, this diagram is from Eric Roberts from 1973. So we've known this information for a very long time. That is, what are the bad things that can happen to seeds depending upon their moisture content and temperature? And if you just look at where the arrow points, it shows that if we can dry seeds below equilibrium with about 65% humidity, fungi can no longer grow. So basically, we can stop molds, fungi, in storage simply by drying below about 65% equilibrium relative humidity. Insects are a little hardier, but if we dry below about 35% humidity, insects are unable to grow as well. So what this indicates is that if we just use drying alone, we can in fact take care of the major problems of storage. And in fact, that little box there indicates a situation or a spot where dryness alone without refrigeration can give us storage for 1 to 10 years without any refrigeration. In fact, that box is between 20 and 35 degrees centigrade. Fairly warm storage. Nonetheless, once we dry seeds enough, we can get quite good longevity from it. And we don't have these fungi and insect problems. So now I'll talk a little bit about relative humidity because, again, it's important in the story. We now have many ways to measure relative humidity. There are fairly sophisticated water activity measurement instruments like the Aqualab and so on. But also we now have very inexpensive electronic meters. So the one shown on the right, the one showing 69% is just about $3 US to have that electronic meter. Or there are analog meters that are also quite inexpensive. So it's not hard to measure moisture content, relative humidity, which is the same as moisture content. Also, as you notice on the lower left side, there's also now pH paper, essentially for humidity. That is, it looks like pH paper, but it measures humidity. this is a development that we've come across that we think is very important for pragmatic measurement of humidity. A project I'm going to describe soon brought us to many places to talk about seed storage. And the biggest problem we found was really lack of awareness and knowledge of what the humidity is. That is, if you're storing seeds, they will equilibrate to the ambient humidity. If you don't know what the humidity is, you don't really know how you're storing your seeds, because most of them are in porous sacks where the moisture will go right through. So a way to measure accurately either equilibrium relative humidity or moisture content is very important. These simple strips change color. They change from blue when it's dry to pink when it's moist, and give a very simple indication. So for example, I did a simple experiment. I put some fairly moist seeds in a container, put a strip in, and you can see in 5 minutes it turns pink. Now, it's not so wet, it takes a little bit longer, but it takes only half an hour at the most, even with dry seeds, to see this change. So simply comparing the color back to the chart, we can determine what the seed moisture content is by comparing that to the relative humidity chart. So really now we can say very easily that either with a meter where you have a specific number or a simple indicator strip like this, we can now say, depending on the reading you get from that simple measurement with some seeds in a closed container, what the potential storage lifetime is. That is from very good, down around 20% humidity or below, up to extremely poor, up above 70 or 80%, where you also are going to have other types of problems. So we now have a fairly straightforward way to measure and monitor seed moisture content. So there are many seed drying methods. Air drying is almost universal. It's used almost everywhere. Some of these pictures are from Nepal and India themselves. But also, of course, there's very high, sophisticated heated air dryers as well. A picture in the lower center is also from India. So there's many facilities available on a large scale for drying seeds. Now, a new way, though, that we've been working on is using desiccants. So large equipment is not available in all places, and it's also heated air is not all that effective at high humidities. So we could talk about that later. But desiccant drying has the effect, the benefit that we have shown that it's effective. It simply pulls the moisture from the seeds and is attracted by either silica gel or something, or as we're showing here, drying beads, which are a ceramic essentially that will hold and bind water very tightly. It's provided by our collaborators at Rhino Research. This is a project to investigate this was funded by the U.S. Agency for International Development. So basically all you have to do is enclose the seeds in a container with these beads. The water will move to the beads, the seeds will be dry. You can remove the beads, heat them in an oven to regenerate them, and just use them, reuse them indefinitely. They're essentially like ceramic, so they're very long lasting. So here's some data from our colleague, Dr. Kashavulu, and his colleagues here in Hyderabad. Let me walk you through this data because it's a little bit small for you to see, I'm sure. But basically, seeds were stored, these are onion seeds, they were stored in open bags on the left side or after drying with these beads, and then in a closed container on the right side. So in open storage, the moisture content varied with the humidity of the ambient air over the year. It's a year of storage we're seeing, but approximately 9%. After 1 year of storage, in those open conditions, the germination was down to 40%. So basically, the value of those seeds is gone. So as you can see, within a few months of open storage in this condition, which was in Nashik, the seed quality was gone. Other seeds of the same lot were dried using these beads to about 5% moisture content, stored then in closed vessels, containers to prevent rehydration. And you can see a year later, we have about the same germination as we started, 85% germination, lost nothing. This just reproduces what I showed earlier in this slide about low moisture content, low humidity storage can greatly extend the life of the seeds. This is without any type of cooling or refrigeration. Dr. Keshivulu and his group have done this also. On the left is sunflower, on the right is soybeans, and in our project we've tried a large number of different agronomic and vegetable seeds. Consistently, as you might expect, when we lower the moisture content and store seeds compared to higher moisture content storage, we have much longer storage life. So that, I think, is well known. We've just confirmed that now many times. We've shown that this type of drying is actually not only effective, it's also fairly gentle on seeds because it does not require heating as heated air drying does. An added bonus, as I mentioned earlier, is that we can dry seeds quite dry, again, very gently by just absorbing moisture, to the point where now insects can't grow either. So again, from Dr. Keshivulu's work, on the left side you can see damage that's been done by seeds stored, two seeds stored. Here they were inoculated with insects, so they purposely inoculated them, and sure enough, in open cloth bags, those beetles, bruchids, propagated very extensively and consumed most of the seeds, whereas on the right side you can see that the beetles actually died, and actually the seeds are completely protected simply by drying and storage in packages. So, take a slight detour here just to introduce a topic. Some of you may be familiar, if you're in the vegetable industry, fresh produce industry, with the cold chain. The cold chain in fresh produce means that you cool the product almost immediately after harvest, and then you keep it cold throughout the transport, storage, marketing, distribution chain. So it's called a chain because if anybody breaks it, that is, if someone puts the pallet on a loading dock and leaves it for a day, it's broken. That produce is ruined. So you have to have a complete chain for it to work, and it has to be cold. So of course this requires refrigerated transport, it requires refrigerated storage, and so on. We propose a similar concept, but the dry chain for dry commodities, where in the dry chain we would harvest, we would dry that, initially dry it in air, that's great, but probably to get the most longevity we would dry that further, perhaps using drying beads, for example, so that we get down to very favorable moisture contents. And then packaging, that's the key. That is, put this commodity in a hermetic package that will prevent moisture movement, so that when you then store that and the monsoon comes later and the air humidity goes up, the moisture content stays low. So the combination of the drying and the packaging really constitutes the chain. You can see I've got this picture in transport. These guys are dumping out the seeds from packages, exposing them to the air again. Our concept is put it in a plastic bag and leave it in a plastic bag or whatever container until you're finished with it. So don't be opening it, exposing it to humid air. Then you can get things either to the consumer or to farmer for planting in good shape. So again, the key concepts of the dry chain: harvest seeds and using the same procedures currently used, air dry. When that's not dry enough, sometimes it is, sometimes the climate is such that it's very good and that's all you need. We would still recommend putting it in a hermetic bag, in a container, and or using drying beads to dry it further. Get it to a low moisture content, and then keep that product in a hermetic package for the rest of its lifetime. This would be a way to ensure quality all the way through the cycle, whether it's a commodity or for seed. So this is sort of summarized in this diagram, which shows on two axes, wet and dry on the vertical axis and cold and warm on the horizontal axis. So it's very, very simple. If you look up in the upper right quadrant, the pour, what that means is that hardly anything post-harvest stores well at warm, wet conditions. Neither fresh produce nor seeds like to be warm and wet. When we look at produce, fresh produce, you really can't dry them. They're fresh. It's lettuce, it's tomatoes. You can't dry them, so all you can do is cool them. So for fresh products, we have the cold chain. But for dry products, we have other choices. So for example, we can just take them and dry them, get them to low moisture content, and even though it's still fairly warm, that's actually pretty good. That is, we have them now in a situation where we get intermediate storage without much problem. Now, if we can cool them after drying, that's even better. Long-term germplasm storage, stock seed, and so on, where you want longer time, certainly cooling is beneficial, but moisture content reduction is the most important. So I'll just say that we are working with various groups, including this group, Bioversity International. It's a CGIAR center, for example, in Delhi. They are actually implementing this even on a smaller scale, that is in local communities, to create germplasm banks for local farmers to save their own germplasm, their own seeds, in a dry condition, or for farmers who are going to save their seed to deposit their seeds, have it dried, stored for them for the next year's planting, and so on. We really see this as potentially a nucleus for creating community-based drying services. That is, this could be used not only for seeds, but many things could be brought to a community-based service, dried using either desiccants or whatever system, with the facilities for packaging, and the consumer or the farmer could take that home, assured that it would last much longer. Another key point when we think beyond seeds, when we think about grain commodities and so on, which are in fact seeds, huge problems in the world of spoilage and loss. Up to 30% of the productivity of agriculture is lost prior to the consumer, that is, between harvest and consumer in many developing countries. An added problem of this is that when you have those conditions, high moisture and fungi, you have the potential for aflatoxin accumulation as well, which actually makes the food toxic to humans and animals. So we have problems not only with the loss, but with toxicity as well. So drying is the key to solving that problem as well. So the map I show here, I put a circle around a very vast region of the world, really, that has the combination of high humidity and high temperature. You can see there are other humid regions of the world, but half the year they're very cold. They really don't have the same challenges that you have in the tropical regions, where you have the combination of high temperature and high humidity that are so devastating to storage of fresh commodities. This shows a large storage in India, for example, which obviously if it rains on it, that's going to be a problem. But even without rain, high humidity will cause that moisture content to increase. So here's our concept, the dry chain concept. First, make it dry. Whatever method, whether it's desiccants, the climate itself, because it's dry at harvest, heated air drying, we have to get these commodities dry. We have to then know what the moisture content is, so that when we package it, we know that it's safe. And as I said, that has become very simple. You don't need a fancy moisture meter, you don't need ovens and scales, you just need some strips that are very inexpensive and reusable. Very simple problem. And then it needs to be packaged. Of course, most of you in the seed world package your seeds in foil containers or whatever. We just need to be sure that that's continued throughout storage and packaging to make it a complete chain. That is, there's never an opportunity for those seeds to moisturize, because from then on you either have to dry them again or you're going to suffer losses. So our whole story in a nutshell is make it dry and keep it dry. That's all it really is. So let me just summarize. I glossed over it fairly quickly, but I'm sure you're aware that every step in variety development, seed production, conditioning, and storage is critical for high seed quality. Any misstep at any of those stages can result in big problems at the next stage and thereafter. However, once you have seeds in your hands, drying and maintaining low moisture content are the most critical factors for extending seed quality and storage life and delivering high value, high vigor seeds to farmers. We believe that implementing the dry chain will improve seed quality and also, in its further extension, reduce food waste, particularly in humid climates where it's much more difficult to achieve those conditions. So that's my story. I would like now to also encourage you to continue the development of the seed bowl concept here in Hyderabad in Telangana. We've done this, as I mentioned briefly in my introductory remarks, we've done this to some degree in California. I can discuss more about that in the panel tomorrow. But it is very simple to do. It creates synergy and innovation between public sector and the seed industry. And together that supports research and education for breeding and seed technology, which then comes back and helps support the industry. So thank you very much. The last slide I cannot leave out, which is the thank you to being invited to do this and for you for listening. I also want to thank Dr. Keshavulu and his team at Telangana State Agricultural University who produced most of the results that I talked about. Also, Johan van with Rhino Research, whose company has developed this concept of the drying beads. Johan, where are you? Over here, waving a cap. There's Johan. You can catch up with him about that. And also my colleague, Pete Hammer de Hall, who was integral to this whole project. So thank you very much.